and welcome to Women in Retail Talks. I'm Christina Stidham, Digital Content Manager at Women in Retail Leadership Circle. Today, I'm joined by Latoya Williams-Belfort, new Executive Director of the 15% Pledge, a nonprofit advocacy organization urging major retailers to commit 15% of their shelf space to Black-owned businesses. In this episode, we're discussing her career history in DEI work, how retailers can advocate for Black-owned businesses, her goals for 2021 at the Pledge, and much more. So Latoya, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So I'm familiar with the 15% Pledge. I know it just started in 2020, but can you give a brief overview for our listeners, explaining its mission, what you guys are doing, and some of the companies that are currently pledged?
Absolutely. So, it's been a fast and furious 8 months for the Pledge. We were started, just about 8 months ago by our founder, Aurora James. She is an entrepreneur herself and a fashion pioneer running Brother Velez. And really as a call to action around the racial uprising in 2020, she launched the 15% Pledge. And as you mentioned, the 15% Pledge is a racial equity and economic justice nonprofit organization, and really calling on multi-brand retailers, corporations, to allocate 15% of their purchasing power to Black entrepreneurs, and also to really take a very strategic look at their internal DEI practices and to ensure that equity is really embedded in their infrastructure, and they're working on many fronts to really ensure that their organizations and their companies have equitable opportunities and access.
Perfect. And where does the number 15% come from?
At 15% is a data point that represents there's just about 15% of Black people in our current population. So 15% of Black people, really thinking about, again, equitable opportunity and access. So starting with 15%, as kind of the floor, as we work with each individual partner, really kind of taking stock of where they are around supporting Black businesses, working with the Black vendors, kind of, again, thinking about their internal DEI practices, initiatives, and strategies. Really, 15% can be the floor for some of our partners who have been doing good work, but just need to really think about kind of year over year sustainable practices to continue to amplify equity. And I'm happy to say that, we are working currently with major retailers and corporations. We're working with Sephora, we're working with Macy's, Bloomingdale's, West Elm, Madewell. We're even working with cool tech companies like Yelp. So, we've had a lot of partner engagement over the last 8 months. And I think it really shows that people are coming to the table understanding that equity is just good business practice.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. And of course, you would always want it to be higher than 15%. Like you said, that's just a base level for what they should be trying to get to within their companies to start.
Absolutely.
So,
And we work on year over year partnerships. So, we try to create goals that are, achievable and strategic and long term. And everybody is at a different entry point, right? So again, 15% is our target, but we work with companies and partners to get to 15% and also exceed 15%. And in some cases, companies come in to partner with us that are in certain areas already beyond the 15%. And again, how can we grow and develop those numbers as well?
that's great. So now let's talk about your career history. When I was writing your interview questions, I read a quote from you in a press release that said, "My entire career has been rooted in the intersection of racial justice, equity, and corporate accountability."
Yes.
So that's really powerful. So can you talk about your experience and how your work in diversity, equity, and inclusion brought you to join the 15% Pledge?
Absolutely. I think I've been very, very lucky to be a person that is able to do work that directly aligns with my passion and my lived experience and really what I call my service, right? I'm a native New Yorker. I grew up in, what I call urban America, New York kind of being the quintessential urban hub. And, just understanding all the nuances to growing up in a city like New York, and really all the different populations in New York, and a lot of those populations in New York and in other cities, around the world, don't always have equal opportunity, and folks are dealing with under-resourced communities and opportunity. So, being able to do this work, I've been in the human services nonprofit kind of sector for over 15 years, and really just, I like to say, a champion in support of a variety of populations throughout my career. But ultimately, people that are trying to gain equal opportunity and equal access, right? Really thinking about under-resourced populations who want better education, better healthcare, better housing, and equal opportunity to building wealth. And I think that history and that passion, and kind of my service through my work for many years led me to Aurora James and the pledge. I was so impassioned by her call to action to start this organization. And, personally, in 2020, during the racial uprising, I was internally asking myself, how am I, being additive to this moment? And how am I directly working toward, a sustainable change, to really kind of dismantling some of the infrastructures, the status quo infrastructures that are in place now, race-based infrastructures, and how am I being a part of the solutions toward a more equitable future? So, when I joined the pledge, I just felt like it was a synergetic combination of my work and my passion, and really my internal call to action to ensure that equity is just the way forward, to really dismantle a lot of the race-based wrongs that have happened throughout, our society, and really, again, just amplify and prioritize equity, and the opportunity for access and to build wealth for Black people.
And you can tell just by your answer, how passionate you are about it. So that's really commendable, all the work that you've done throughout your career, and now taking that to the 15% pledge. So obviously, the pledge extends beyond the retail industry to advocate for Black-owned businesses in every sector. We would want this change to happen in all aspects of our society. And the organization also addresses the need for corporations to support D&I efforts across their companies. So let's just focus on the retail space, since our listeners are primarily coming from that world. How can retailers, both big and small, start making changes that advance Black prosperity?
I'd start by saying I think a step in the right direction is taking the pledge, right? We're an organization that, again, are working with some major retailers and multi-year partnerships to really look at data, to really look at metrics, to really look at strategizing sustainable, initiatives that really help to increase representation, support of Black entrepreneurs. And, we are really bringing folks to the table that are committed to a change, not just the lip service of, kind of announcing that they're an anti-racist organization, but really kind of doing the work in a very strategic, accountable way, being very transparent about kind of where they are, and because of a variety of elements and infrastructures that have been in place systemically, but more importantly, saying, okay, we are committed to taking stock and making a change. So I think, retailers really are in a unique space in this environment to take the pledge and really commit to sustainable long-term change.
Yeah, and as you mentioned in your, I think, previous answer, 2020 brought to the forefront a lot of these conversations and a lot of actions around racial injustice. Some corporations were vocal about their opinions and others remained silent, as you just mentioned. So why is it important that leaders take a stance around these issues, both internally to their organization, maybe creating a D&I committee or just making a statement to their team to make sure they're supported, as well as publicly, as a lot of we've seen like Ben and Jerry's, for example, do during this time?
Yeah, I continuously say that, being an anti-racist organization, being pro-racial equity and for economic justice is just business, right? And I think that, again, a lot of companies um, have made statements or have done other kind of visible outreaches on their website, social media, but really, where is the action, where's the work, where's the commitment to the change? And I think that's really kind of where we are now. Just understand that 2020 was a year in the history books for us all, and really thinking about, how do we continue to move forward a lot of the, societal understanding that floated to the forefront about race-based wrongs, again, about racial equity, about economic justice. So for 2021, how do we, advance action that really continues to perpetuate sustainable change?
Yeah, and we see it in, there's so many different aspects, especially for retailers. Even something like you're creating a new product and it's supposed to be, nude or natural colors. Are you really producing product that, runs the gamut of all of the different natural skin colors that are, reflective in this world? Or
Right.
even in organizations leadership, are you promoting people of color? Are they being skipped? Or are you even letting them get an interview? So there's so many things where people can take action.
Right. And that goes back to the whole umbrella of, kind of my mantra is that, equity is just good business. To your point, it only benefits a retailer to create a product, right? That it's a great product, but really, authentically speaks to a certain market, right? That's only a benefit. That's only a revenue driver. Again, having diverse voices at the table, bringing in different lived experiences, again, only makes products and services more comprehensive and more inclusive, which drives revenue. We totally understand at the pledge that, you know, retailers and corporations and our partners are businesses, right? And at the bottom line is how do they continue to drive revenue. But we also know that, DEI makes it better. And really making more comprehensive products and inclusive products and really kind of nurturing your staff and changing your culture to be more inclusive and people centric only outputs a better team that is working harder and more strategically. And all of these efforts drive the bottom line. We just having everybody at the table, using and supporting Black entrepreneurs. Again, all of these strategies, if you will, just make a more comprehensive organization that is, running at 200%. And again, ultimately, driving the bottom line up.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so much, so many stats around this too. It's just time to actually, put that into play across the board.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about making these changes as far as in corporate America and larger companies, but I know that the pledge also realized that a lot of individuals would like to join and support your organization. So can you talk about the pledge's consumer commitment and how individuals can make an impact through that?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, our founder, Aurora James, is an entrepreneur, a Black entrepreneur, and she understands directly, when we see this stat about during the pandemic, 40% of Black businesses, right, had to close their doors because for a variety of reasons, lack of access, a variety of reasons, access to capital, weren't able to make it. And again, that's just a gap in the market. So we really, want and encourage consumers. And again, 2020, we are seeing folks much more socially active. Everybody is getting into the conversation in a variety of ways. So we're encouraging consumers to, first of all, be more educated about who you support, where your dollar goes, how those products are created, environmentally and beyond, right? Kind of who is at the table supporting those products. And then after you kind of educate yourself on, ensuring that products that you bring into your home are products that represent, your social and stance. Then let's take it one step further and really commit 15%, right? Back to that 15% number, 15% of your monthly buying power. Let's make sure that those dollars are allocated to Black-owned businesses, right? Let's make sure that we are continuing to lift up a population of entrepreneurs that, again, we know for a lot of systemic reasons, you know, have been disenfranchised and don't have equal opportunity to success and create great products and great services. And we want to make sure that they can survive this moment and beyond and receive the supports that they need. So again, really calling on consumers to allocate 50% of their monthly spend to Black-owned businesses. And we've seen a lot of support generated in that area coming just off of the holiday season. The Pledge and Aurora created some wonderful gift guides and kind of really help people to have at their fingertips products and services by Black-owned businesses that they could support without, so much legwork and research. And that's one of the things we're proud of at the Pledge to do, is to really cultivate and incubate a community of Black entrepreneurs that we can share with our retail partners, but also share with our consumer community, as people continue to do the research and engage in the process of discovering some really fantastic Black entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's a great point. If people need to know where to go in order to make the commitment. And as a follow-up to that, I believe I saw on the Pledge's website that you are creating sort of like a master document for all Black-owned businesses, I think across the US as a whole. Is there anything you can share about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges that we hear as we talk to current partners and work to onboard new pledge takers is really this kind of direct access to Black-owned businesses. And a big part of our work at the Pledge is kind of creating and stewarding and cultivating a community of Black entrepreneurs, right? Really bringing an entrepreneur in, going through a very intensive vetting process, and then cultivating and stewarding those entrepreneurs, providing services, access to services, mentorship, a variety of different things that we hear from Black entrepreneurs that are challenges for them independently, right? So how can we create a community and really provide those supports so that they can thrive? And then really with a long-term goal of creating a pipeline. So, when we bring pledge takers on and we have this call to action on 15% of dedicating 15% of your shelf, and we hear the feedback that it is hard to locate businesses that are ready, Black-owned businesses. And, what a wonderful service to be able to say, well, we have this community of Black entrepreneurs ready to go, right? Really ready to support your organization and be a part of your supply chain. So we are building that community as we speak. And again, working on, really listening to what the entrepreneurs need so that we can build programs and supports that, again, help with mentorship and different service acquisition and things like that to continue to support their growth and development. So very exciting. And we're really kind of moving the needle of numbers of entrepreneurs that are joining that community every day.
Yeah, that is really exciting. And that'll probably tie into my last question. I'm wondering what your goals are for 2021 as the new executive director at 15% Pledge.
So many goals. So much work to be done, such good work to be done. But I think if I had to highlight kind of my top 3 goals, first and foremost, to continue to support and work with our current pledge takers. And kind of a extension of that goal is, we have some exciting announcements that are coming up shortly of new pledge takers that are committing to this work. So really supporting them and making sure that they have what they need to continue down this road. I think secondly, as we approach our 1-year anniversary, which, every time Aurora and I think about the fact that she started this organization and it's almost approaching a year, is just wonderful and amazing and unbelievable. but really kind of building out our infrastructure. Like right now, we're hiring a bunch of really key positions so that we can, do more work and be more strategic and really build our infrastructure so that the organization can continue to grow and develop. Um, and then, just continuing to spread the word about, the importance of supporting Black entrepreneurs and cultivating that community that I mentioned of Black entrepreneurs and, really kind of providing all of the services that we hear through their community voice, that they need so that they are prepared, when the opportunity arises to meet the need of different retailers and partners. So our entrepreneurs, our staff, our pledge takers, I kind of, right there, my top three. And just looking forward to what 2021 has, to offer and continuing to amplify, racial equity and economic justice just as good business.
Yeah, so many things happening there. Best of luck. And if somebody wants to join or take the pledge or, just learn more, and maybe you guys have social pages, where should they go?
Yes. So we have our website, 15percentpledge.org. For everybody that's listening, please go there. Consumer pledge can be taken there. Corporate pledge can be taken there. And, information, contact us, all of those things can happen there. Also, we are a nonprofit organization and we are growing, so we're actively fundraising. So if someone feels compelled to support our work and to join our work as a donor, that can also happen at 15percentpledge.org. We have a very robust community on Instagram of a combination of all of our stakeholders, entrepreneurs, consumer pledge takers, pledge partners. So please follow us on Instagram. And again, we're hiring right now as well. So on LinkedIn, we have more information about the positions that are available. We're looking for the best and brightest who are so passionate about our mission and vision. You can find out more information on LinkedIn and also on our website. So tons of ways to get engaged with us at this moment. And we just, look forward to engaging so many different folks that want to help us move this mission and vision forward.
Yeah, a lot of opportunities to connect with the organization and move forward. So thank you so much, LaToya. I really appreciate you joining me on this episode of Women in Retail Talks and talking about a really important topic with the 15% pledge.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And again, your audience is really key to what we're doing. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to share our message.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at womeninretail.com/podcast for show notes. Women in Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Women in Retail Talks.